Known as the father or godfather of anime, Osamu Tezuka was born on November 3, 1928. Over the course of his 40-year career, Tezuka created more than 700 volumes of manga encompassing approximately 150,000 pages of drawings and produced 200,000 pages of storyboards and scripts for nearly 500 episodes of anime and animated films. Outside of Japan, he is best known as the creator of Astro, but his influence goes much deeper and broader. As one of Japan's main newspapers once said, foreign visitors to Japan often find it difficult to understand why Japanese people like comics so much. One explanation for the popularity of comics in Japan is that Japan had Osamu Tezuka, whereas other nations did not. Tezuka took to drawing early on with great passion, so much so that his mother had to erase his drawings and reuse his notebooks to keep up with him. At the time, drawing manga was seen as a waste of time, but his parents nurtured and encouraged his talents, taking him to Takarazuka musicals, introducing Disney films, and subscribing to newspapers for the comic strips. Tezuka points to two moments that profoundly impacted him. The first experience was during the war. In 1944, as Japan's war efforts grew more desperate, the 16-year-old Tezuka, who was still in high school, was drafted into full-time service at a military factory. The following year, America intensified its attacks on mainland Japan. One day, he was ordered to be on lookout at the watchtower next to the factory. Suddenly, the air raid sirens went off, and when he looked ahead, he saw a large fleet of American aircrafts headed his way. When he realized they're here, the whistling of the falling bombs could already be heard. The firebombs were just overhead, and he was quickly surrounded by explosions. Tezuka barely escaped the fires, and he made his way to an evacuation site along the riverbanks in Yodogawa, Osaka. Arriving there, he saw an unbelievable sight. There were limbs scattered all over the place, and I couldn't tell if they were human or lumber. Seeing this, I said to myself, "This isn't real. This can't be true. This is a dream. It must be a dream. And if it is a dream, I want it to end soon. I didn't want to see this nightmare anymore." That's how unrealistic, how horrible it was. That was the most traumatic experience of my entire life, and although I've been drawing manga for over 40 years since the war, what I saw that day won't leave my mind. The second experience was after the war. Despite the many challenges, Tezuka completed high school and chose a path in medicine. While working as an intern, a patient he looked after was in the final moments of their life. The patient had suffered terribly and was emaciated. The moment finally came, and the doctor told the family that they had passed away. At that moment, although the patient had already died, their scowled brows eased and their expression suddenly changed, looking well and at peace. It's as if they had forgotten all of their suffering until then. Observing this, that's when I realized humans are just a small part of this eternal web of life. That's why I believe life isn't something that is just a mere 50, 70, or 100 years long, but something of a grander, more cosmic scale. Witnessing the horrifying sight at Yodogawa and his patient's expression at the moment of their passing, these two experiences with death became the starting point for Tezuka's lifelong pursuit of a deeper view and understanding of life. And while he tried to juggle both his career in medicine and his undeniable passion for manga, he received a piece of advice from his mother that clarified his choice to do what made him happy. Ultimately, he decided to pursue a path in manga with the hope of conveying to children the preciousness of life. It'll be quite the feat to delve into all of Tezuka's works. A fan page estimated it would take about 145 hours without any breaks to read the entire collection. Here we can focus on 4 of his major works, and I do want to include there may be some spoilers in this section. Jungle Emperor. One of Tezuka's earlier works, Jungle Emperor follows a white lion named Leo, where the story begins with his father getting killed by a hunter. Leo escapes captivity and is adopted by a kind boy, learning the ways of humankind. When he returns to the jungle, he strives to bring peace and harmony between animals and humans. When Jungle Emperor came out in 1950, it was unheard of at that time to have a manga about anthropomorphic animals that explore themes such as humanity's foolishness and selfishness, intercultural exchange and conflicts, coexistence of people and with nature, good and evil, war and peace, and ideals versus reality. It was also unheard of for a manga aimed at children to include the death of the protagonist within its story. It went beyond a coming-of-age story to one about life and death. At the start, the main character Leo's father was shot by a human, but toward its conclusion, Leo gives his life to save another human. That person holds on to Leo's fur and passes it on to Leo's son. Through this, Tezuka shows the continuity of life from generation to generation, the passing of the baton of the responsibility to live fully. Astro Boy. Known as the most iconic of Tezuka's works, Astro Boy is set in the future following a boy robot with 100,000 horsepower. Going on adventures and confronting real societal issues, Astro Boy serves as a bridge between humans and robots, fighting to defend both races and establish peace and friendship between them. On the surface, Astro Boy was a symbol of hope and adventure, stories of rockets, exploring the world underwater, a character that loved humanity and fought evil. And for children, they were lessons on morality and compassion. But on a deeper level, this piece was a product of the times. Coming out of the war, Tezuka was concerned about people's distorted expectations of economic and technological growth, the use of atomic weapons and technology that could wipe out humanity, and the ongoing issues of racism and prejudice. Although he loved Astro Boy, Tezuka felt the story about an imperfect robot boy facing the dualities of life was eventually watered down by society as a story of a strong and perfect robot hero that saved humanity. Blackjack. Tezuka underwent a period of slump, with his businesses failing and society saying his work was outdated and childish compared to the popular Gekiga-style mangas, which were graphic novels with real struggles, violence, and detailed art. He was torn to stick to his vision of giving hope to children or to evolve with the times. It was during this time that Tezuka revisited his roots in medicine and created his greatest work, Blackjack, giving him a second wind in his career. The story follows Blackjack, an unlicensed and shadowy doctor with inhuman surgical skill who charges astronomical fees but burns with a strong sense of justice and compassion. In addition, Tezuka grappled with the ongoing advances in technology, specifically in the morality of euthanasia and life support. He questioned what it truly meant for humans to live. Life and death had always been a recurring theme in his works, but this time he tackled the issue not in a sci-fi or otherworldly setting, but in real life as a doctor who was responsible for saving people. Ultimately, people see this work as Tezuka's own cry to continue to live, to never give up, and despite the character's complexities and others shunning him in the story, his message was always clear: to help those in need. Phoenix. Lastly, Tezuka's life work, Phoenix. The story follows the immortal life form Phoenix, navigating through the past and future, engaging with lives of different people in different times and parts of the world. In this final work, Tezuka directly explores the fundamental question of life and death. His personal belief goes back to his experience of seeing his patient pass away. That's when I realized humans are just a small part of this eternal web of life. That's why I believe life isn't something that is just a mere 50, 70, or 100 years long, but something of a grander, more cosmic scale. And he continues, the main character Phoenix has eternal life. This Phoenix says, life overflows throughout space. Everything has life. The stars, the sun, the earth. Everything is alive. That's what the Phoenix encourages humans and all living beings. For him, the Phoenix represented his belief in the eternal underlying life force of the universe itself, and it depicted the drama of humankind, an unending story of people drawing on this life force to live today and to live tomorrow. Everything from Doraemon, Sailor Moon, Kamen Rider, Dragon Ball, Fist of the North Star, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure were directly inspired by Tezuka, and the list continues. And many of these series have become a global presence, where in America, it's safe to say it's a part of mainstream culture. Tezuka revolutionized manga itself. Before him were Yonkoma comics, standalone 4-grid comics with slapstick humor. He introduced a longer narrative to the format, eventually expanding it to full comic books telling a complex story with dynamic columns and grids that added action, depth, and speed. He also produced manga books, animation series, and feature films, overseeing and doing it all simultaneously. And because of the limitations with time and resources, he refined and innovated animation techniques that are still used today. Inspired by Disney, Tezuka introduced the use of large eyes, an iconic element in anime today, using them to better express emotion and age and draw the reader into their world. He also drew characters in a way that felt alive on the page, blurring the line between realism and the cartoon world. And with the GHQ's occupation in post-war Japan, themes that promoted militarism and nationalism were censored out of the fear that it would spur an uprising among the youth. Within these limitations, and combined with Tezuka's view of hope, equality, and a brighter future, he created works that inspired a wave of new genres, such as sci-fi and girl superheroes, genres that appeal to both kids and adults. He also explored real-life themes in his stories and established manga as a legitimate medium of storytelling and opened up its possibilities. Just 6 months after undergoing surgery for stomach cancer and 3 months before his passing, he traveled to Osaka to speak to a group of 1,400 junior high school students. Despite his loved ones asking him not to go due to his frail health, he refused to cancel, saying there were children waiting for him. There, he spoke warmly and casually of his inspirations and view of life, and left the students with this parting message. In reality, it's unthinkable that billions of people and countless living beings could live together on this tiny planet in the universe. We live on such a small and fragile planet, but we fight with one another or always think only about ourselves. We absolutely cannot allow our children to live such a future. I want children to discard that way of thinking and to love humankind and all living beings while living out their lives. I'd like you all to become such children. While it's difficult to grasp and convey a person's life fully, what was apparent was Osamu Tezuka's unwavering determination to fight and to continue to give hope to future generations. And the most traumatic experience in his life didn't leave him disillusioned and hopeless. Instead, it became the source of his will to live fully, to bring joy to others.